Okay, everyone. So we're going to be talking about customizing peak performance with the power of Power Automate and custom adaptive cards. You all are a lucky bunch, I'll call you, because I did this presentation at Power Platform Conference a couple of weeks ago, but it wasn't recorded. I don't have any content online, really, so I hope you all enjoy this because I had a lot of fun putting this together. So a little bit about me. As was said before, my name is Azure McFarlane. I'm a senior consultant at Hitachi Solutions, and I'm a Microsoft BizApps MVP. I'm based in the Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia, so about 10 minutes outside of the city. Fun fact, my background's in biochemistry and manufacturing, so I'm one of those citizen developers turned now pro devs. And I transitioned into consulting last February. So prior to that, I spent 9 years in the manufacturing industry doing supporting roles and found Power Automate in 2019, started dabbling in it, transitioned into my company's first Power Platform role, at least at my site, and then ended up leaving for other adventures. So Azure and Automate is I'm Flomanced. I'm in a Flomantic relationship with Power Automate, and my name Azure is my real name. I was born with that, and it's just absolutely coincidental that now I am working with tech. So I'm a long distance runner, or at least I was prior to this move. So I just moved about 2 months ago from Maryland to Virginia to be with my partner, and I'm a spicy agua aficionado. So Spindrift runs plentiful in this household. If you'd like to connect with me, I know Tina had already put up my contact information, but here it is again. So you can find me on Twitter, and you can also find me on LinkedIn. Okay, so our agenda for today is going to be what's up with adaptive cards. We're going to have a real world use case in which inspired this presentation, designing the solution, the battle of the cards, because you've probably seen some adaptive cards. If you haven't used them yet, or think you haven't, you probably have. And then we're going to build some adaptive cards, and we're going to show you a few different ways that you can do this. One of them will not be Copilot, so you are safe from Copilot. It's not as ready yet to be able to tackle even creating an adaptive card. Okay, so what is an adaptive card? An adaptive card is it's an interactive card that can be rendered natively inside Teams, virtual agents, Outlook, in Viva, and other places across the Microsoft stacks. Adaptive cards are also not just a Microsoft thing. So in the tech ecosystem, you've probably interacted with something that looks like what's on the screen. So on the left here, we're going to show how to build an adaptive card in the Adaptive Card Designer, if you're not familiar with that. And then here are a few more examples. So it could be that we need to gather some information from people. It could be we are simply displaying options, but we can use them in Teams. We can use them in email. We can even use them in PVA now. So that is an option as well to put adaptive cards there. And so you can interact with your users. They are built with JSON. They don't actually contain any logic themselves, which are pretty cool. It's just a user interface. And they adapt to the styling of the app that they're deployed in. So you just provide the card layout and the data. So you don't have to worry about making a specifically Teams adaptive card. The designer will help us do that, but also the formatting between all of the different places where we can sit them the same. So this is part of like the adaptive card framework. We can embed photos, hyperlinks, documents, choice sets, text inputs, yada, 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 inside of adaptive cards. So they're really, really versatile. And we can use them through message extensions. We can use them through bots. How many people in here used adaptive cards or made custom adaptive cards before? Just want to put your hands up or put it in the chat. One. Okay, so maybe a few people. Okay, got one. All right. Well, then hopefully this will be a fun thing for you to learn about today. Okay, so we've got the adaptive card designer here on the left. We'll actually go into this a little bit later to show you how to build them, but we build them potentially here. We have a payload editor that does everything for us. We can drag and drop different elements into an adaptive card and edit them. When we use the adaptive card designer, we just copy and paste the JSON inside our Teams action. So on the right-hand side for Power Automate for Microsoft Teams, these are going to be the actions that you'll see for adaptive cards. So we can apply with an adaptive card in a channel. We can post an adaptive card and wait for a response from our user. We can also update an adaptive card in a chat or channel. Some of these have some limitations to them, and we will talk about that as well. All right, so the story, one, Mama Cloud said never to talk to strangers on the internet, but that's how I got into Power Platform, so here we are. I didn't put the whole backstory here, but I built this use case for MIT. They contacted me on Twitter, of all places, to ask for someone to help them with a very manual process, and we worked together for a while to come up with a solution. So the basic story was that there was a new regulation that came out from the United States surrounding collegiate and high school workouts for student athletes. Um, some of you may have heard a while ago that there were often times you'd hear about students in the news who were hospitalized, maybe even passed away from doing a strenuous workout. And so there are some regulations that came about that said, hey, you all need to now have approval bodies to ensure that these workouts are suitable for students, that they're safe and, efficacious at the same time. So what we had was a very manual process. We had a coach that would submit, here pictured, a workout request for review via email. There's no standard language, no standard format. Some of our approvers may or may not have been included, right? And we attach some files. So we send this approval out, and the approval panel needed to assess the workouts. There's no claim at this point, like in the manual process, there's no claims for the work, right? And we said that maybe the proper approvers might have been left off the email. So potentially we have multiple people doing the work, potentially we have nobody doing the work, right? So we might have some work in progress, but the result is that we often had from this very manual process that things were overdue. Multiple people were doing the work, or it just didn't happen right at all because there was a lack of communication. Everything was very email based. Although this department in total, the sports department, was using Teams heavily, they just didn't know how to integrate a better solution in this way. So workouts were supposed to be turned around within 72 hours. They weren't meeting that time frame. Coaches weren't able to, do their workouts, or they'd have to reach out for a manual update. As you can see, just in a paper email-based process was not working for them. So we needed a solution that's going to fit a few things. So some solution constraints and notes. All we had was a Power Automate standard license. So there was no way for us to use Dataverse or anything else that was going to be better than Excel or SharePoint. So we were kind of stuck with a few things and only standard connectors at the time. So we went with a SharePoint-based solution. We had some exchange online funkiness. So email-based solutions weren't going to quite work out. Even Power Automate approvals, if people are familiar with that, Power Automate approvals lets you generate like approvals, like sequential approvals and whatnot. But because of the weirdness with Exchange Online, sometimes they get emails from Power Automate, sometimes they weren't. So we decided we probably couldn't go there. We had a lack of a tracking log for any of these workouts that were happening, any of the approvals. There was a lack of visibility into the requests. We needed notifications to be specific to the approver. So we had 2 approval bodies for each sport, and there were roughly 26 sports, if I remember correctly. So a lot of approvals that need to happen. We needed the ability to claim and or assign the work to somebody. We needed notifications for overdue approvals and a central document repository, because part of the regulation now was that if you are audited by, the NCAA or whatever, sports authority, you needed to have good documentation for this workout was approved on this date, in this format, and here it is. So at the time, it was just kind of files existed on people's computers and kind of a very amorphous idea. So that's what we needed to solve. Okay, so why didn't we go with an app? So app or not? Well, one, sometimes an app might be a little too much for what you actually need. Adaptive cards allow us to meet the users where they are. They're already using Teams. Why not use Teams? We don't have to direct them elsewhere to be able to interact with these approvals. Adaptive cards are really lightweight, flexible, repeatable. They're text-based, so you don't have to worry about exporting a solution with JSON or anything. You can copy and paste the text anywhere that you need to. It's pretty simple. And also, you can get a response and you can get it fast with the click of a button, right? That's what I really love about adaptive cards. It's pretty instant. If your users, again, want to engage with the card, it's you click a button, maybe type a few notes, and you're on your merry way. Okay. As Mr. Incredible says, it's showtime, but we're going to say it's flow time instead. So let me show you how this approval process works now using adaptive cards, and then we'll go back through and we'll walk through how it all works together. So give me one moment. So please. Okay, so what we used first was a Microsoft form. So we said we weren't going to go with an app, no reason to. So we have three different audiences. We have the coaches that are going to be submitting a workout. The coaches only need to fill out somewhere to fill out their workout submission, a place to attach a file. So we went with Microsoft Forms. We have the the approvers, which is two approval bodies, which are just like general folks within the sports department. And then we also have the director. So we were going to have three different interfaces. So the interface for the coaches is going to be this workout form. And all we have is a few questions for them to fill out. So we need a workout start date, a workout end date, what sport they're submitting for, because this is going to help inform us about our approvers, whether the workout is new or it's being resubmitted, and the criteria for if new, it's never been submitted before. A resubmission could mean it was recently rejected, just needs to have some modifications to it. It could be that this workout was used last year and it was fine, and we need to resubmit it again just for blanket approval to make sure that it's okay. If the modifications are there, we need to list what they are and then a file. So I'll show you what this actually looks like because I just show you the edited version, but very quick and dirty, right? We didn't need anything else, and then a place to turn in some files. So I'm going to go ahead and submit a workout. And we're just going to put some arbitrary dates in here for the work end date. Let's go ahead and just do baseball. And we're going to say the workout is new. And so if we were to click on resubmission, it would ask us if we need the modifications and then give us a few more questions and then bring us in the form. But I'm going to say this is simply new. Oops. Oh yeah, upload the file. I'm just going to upload some random file from my computer. I think I had something with a get started. Yeah, get started with OneDrive, because why not? Right, we'll wait for that to load. So the coach, the coach, when they submit their workout, is simply going to get they're going to get a Teams message that says, great, your workout submission has been submitted, and now you wait. And let me pull over that screen for you as well. Sorry, I have a lot of screens open. So what we should get, if it'll load, hopefully it didn't sign me out. There we go. So workout submission successful. And this is an adaptive card, one that we're using just to inform, but there doesn't need to be an action tied to it. So you can use adaptive cards in that way. So it gives me a summary of what my submission is, and it's just going to be a status message. And as we're moving through the approval process using these adaptive cards, the coach is then also going to get another adaptive card to let them know, hey, this approval body gave a thumbs up, so did this one. Overall, you're good to go, right? So now in the background, what's happening is we're kicking off a few workflows to then generate an approval card or an approval card for the approvers. So let me show you. We've got, it looks like I've already gotten one, and it's going to look something like this. So the way that we have this, and a reminder is probably going to pop up soon because we have some reminders built into here, is if we have more than one approver for the sport, we're going to send a claim adaptive card. So again, we needed this visibility to work. I don't want everybody to start doing the work at one time. So I'm going to say, hey, we've got a new submission for baseball. Can one of the people here take this? We tag the person, and you saw the icon, the Power Automate notification box popped up for me, but I also get a notification of my activity bell to let me know that something's happening. And it just gives some high level information, and it tags me and one other person who are for the sport of baseball. And I can go ahead and claim this, or I can cancel it. And if I were to click claim, I can say, looks good. What's going to happen is another flow is going to kick off, and then it's going to give me all of the details for this workout. So before that happens, I want to show you how we've set, how it's pulling the approvers and whatnot. So we have we have a staff list in SharePoint that we have. And all we've done is made them people pickers. And so we're just entering in a few names. I've got a few folks here, and we've done this for the entire suite of approvers here. So you can see some sports have one approver, some have two approvers or more approvers. And that's how we got into well, how do we claim this work, which is we're using tags. So we've got this. We have a status log now that we're using to monitor everything that's going on, right? We didn't have Dataverse, so we couldn't use that. Power BI was going to be a little too much for us, so they decided SharePoint. And what we have the option to do is see everything. So the overall submission status will change based on how people are interacting with the adaptive cards. So pending is something's been sent, but everything isn't approved yet. We also have canceled, like if coach submitted a duplicate by mistake, we can cancel the request. We then have some of the details from our Microsoft Forms, so our sport, our workout date. And here we have the approval bodies. We have two. We have sport medicine. Let me see if I can, there we go. Sport medicine and sport performance. So we've just taken a couple of choice fields, and when we send out that claim card, we populate this line item as unclaimed, right? So it's pending overall. The sport medicine approval will be unclaimed, as will the sport performance approval. It depends. So in this case, it was unclaimed because nobody's claimed the work yet. If somebody's claimed the work, it'll indicate their name. Whoever presses the button will then it'll then add their name. So for right now, we're saying that our new entry came in 3 minutes ago. Overall, it's pending. Nobody has completed any adaptive cards, except for this would have come in unclaimed. But since we went ahead and addressed it, it updated to incomplete because nobody's addressed it yet. And the same thing, we haven't seen our sport performance card come in yet, so it's also going to be incomplete. Because some of our sports do end up having one approver, rather than sending this claim card, we're just going to send them all the work directly. So this is how that's set up. And then we have an archive for all the documentation that belongs with this. So we have it by the record number that we can easily query or filter by, and just have that in a SharePoint document library. And as you can see, I really like scones, so I just updated pictures of scones, or added pictures of scones here for previous demos. Okay, so this is how the SharePoint is on the back end. If we go back to Teams to interact with our cards, it looks a little something like this. We have some reminders built in, and I sped them up for you so you could see if we, needed to send some reminders, we could. And it keeps tagging me in there too. So, okay. So we claimed our record for for one of the sports. If a person directly, if there's only one person on the approval panel, instead of getting that claim card, they get a direct card. So in this case, David Johnson is going to be our approver, and he can see everything that's related to the submission. And then we can also, we've attached the files as a sharing link here. So if we were to click on here, it'll open into another browser tab, and you can review the content. So we're allowing people to upload PDFs, videos, Excel sheets. They're just going to set up they're going to attach a copy. We save this to a document library and then create the sharing link so we can just link to it. We don't have to worry about downloading files to our computer or anything to that. So once the request is taken care of, we can say approve, reject, or cancel, right? If it was a duplicate. And then it's going to go back and it's going to update that SharePoint list. And it's also going to update the coach to let them know this has been taken care of. You'll see that we've been given a couple of reminders that keep coming through. I think I have it on every 30 seconds, but if you needed to remind someone who hasn't addressed their adaptive card, we can put on a loop reminders and tag them to let them know, hey, this workout is still outstanding. If you haven't done this yet, I think we have it on a 24-hour loop. And then at 48 hours, if it's still unaddressed and they've not talked to the director then gets a message that says, hey, so-and-so hasn't completed this request. So we've left it at that. So I'll go ahead and approve this and say workout. Looks good. And there we go. So it's updated for me. The reminders will stop for this particular record, but then we also had me down for the other approval body, right? We sent the claim card, and then because I didn't get all the details, I just got, can you take this? Can you, or I think it was Marie or Mary, can one of you take this? And I said, yes, I will take it. So it's tagged me here again to let me know that I have work. Again, the reminders are flowing plentifully just in case I missed it. And I'm, again, same information that the previous approver, David, received in the files. If we had more than one file, it would say file 1, comma, file 2, comma, file 3. We could make this the name of the file if we wanted to. In this case, we don't know how many files that the coach is going to submit. So we've just left it as file 1 n plus 1 at that point. So I'm going to go ahead and click. I'm going to go ahead and click approve and just say, great job. And that will stop the reminders too. And so that's going to update. If we go over to the chat, we saw that we were getting updates as well as each of the approvers is looking over the submission. We're pretending this is the coach. The coach is also getting updates that, hey, your approval is complete by David, and it's also been done by Azure. And so this way, the coach has, a very quick interface for submitting. So they have their Microsoft form, and then they get a few notifications through Teams just to let them know the progress of their submission, and they should get something within 72 hours. So that's their interface. The only interface that the approvers end up having is just in this channel too. So they don't get anything extraneous to this. One great thing about having the adaptive cards, and let me show one that still hasn't been addressed yet, if we can find it, is that we can query the adaptive cards in the channel, which is really nice. So I put a bit of a reference number here to make it really easy. And I concatenated like part of the workflow ID and some time in order to make this unique number so we can trace this adaptive card number throughout the process. It also helps us be able to respond to the thread if needed. But this is the full like thing that the folks, the sports team is interacting with. There should also be one more adaptive card that comes out that is the notification one that says, as an overall summary, Here is, record number 6. Here's who it was approved by. Here are all the people, involved in this. Here's the overall status of canceled, rejected, or approved, and it would send a summary. And right now I don't see that popping up, so that's on the demo gods for today. But that would just give a summary. And this way, people have a very clear picture of what's going on. If we go back to the status log here, let's see if we refresh this. This should have refreshed. Oh no, okay, maybe it should have. There we go. Okay, so we have one of them should have updated to approved, and it did not, but we had approved. It should have been approved by David Johnson, and it was approved by me. So we can see this item has been touched. What we've also done is be able to take all the claim comments from the adaptive cards as well. So we can take them from the adaptive cards and stick them in a central location. We can also link to the adaptive card as well. So in this case, the interface for the director who is overseeing all of the approvals, he just needs to come in here once a day, every other day, at whatever interval, and just check on the status of the request coming through. So if you see something that's overdue because we have something is not addressed within 7 days by any of the approvers, the whole request goes overdue. He'll know to go and talk with that person. This link should take us to, oops, just use web app, and it should bring us to the adaptive card for that particular thing. In this case, because we've already addressed it, it's going to take us to the one that says it's already completed, so we won't see the information. But if this approval was outstanding, the director could go click on the link and it brings them to it so they could see, okay, I don't know what's going on here, and then contact the appropriate approver. So we've done all of this with the adaptive cards, and I'd like to quickly take you through what the flow looks like for this. Because we're doing custom rather than some of the pre-built cards, there is a little bit more information that we have available to extract to us, and we have to do that ourselves. So being able to respond to the thread isn't necessarily an action that's available within Teams. So we have to design this ourselves. So let me this and find the flow for you all. So there are 5 flows. Sorry, it's pulling up. There are 5 flows that govern this this whole solution. So I've stuck everything in a solution, right? A bucket, so that everything sits together. But we ended up using, so in this case, I enhanced the demo because previously we did not have the ability to use parent and child flows. So I had to do a very complicated series of hidden SharePoint columns that say, when this flow triggers, update this column with a stop flow. So when the next one triggers on modification of a record, then we don't have that flow kicking itself off again. If you've not dealt with parent and child flows, we have the ability to start a flow, and then the next one will only start if we tell it to. So we're, using HTTP requests to do this. So for the, we're just going to go over one of the flows for building the adaptive card for this, because a lot of them look very similar. But this is going to be one of the sport performance ones. So when an HTTP request is received, meaning we have a record that's gone in, we're reacting to this record because the parent flow is going to be when that new record comes into SharePoint. And then we can say, okay, based off of that, let's start this next flow, or we don't do anything else. So when we need the approval card, we have to set a few variables. We go get the files that were attached to the Microsoft form. So the Microsoft form brings in files into the SharePoint list item. We're going to extract that, and then we're going to send that to the document library, and then we're going to create that sharing link that we saw that we can click on within the adaptive cards. We have a condition that based on the number of files allows us to do that file 1, comma, file 2, comma, file 3, et cetera, et cetera. want to get the comments from the adaptive card, so we compose that. We compose an adaptive card ID, which was that unique identifier that I put in the top right-hand corner. And then we have to compose the approver email. So we have to do a little bit of manipulation to get that tag. So that feature where I did that app mention to myself, we can do that here. There is also an action to do an app mention at a user, but that is an additional action from within Power Automate. So if you're looking to see, if you're trying to limit maybe some of your calls, then this would be a good way to do it because it's a compose step. And so then we have a branch. We're doing two things at one time. We're going to send the adaptive card. At the same time, we're going to generate the link that we can use in the SharePoint list to click on to take us to Teams for that exact adaptive card. And we're also going to put in a loop on a 48-hour reminder. In our case, I think it's like 30 seconds. But to do this, we use, we're going to, the old action is post, we're going to post an approval an adaptive card. If we hover over the question mark, it's going to tell us that it's post an adaptive card to a Teams channel and wait for a response. So we don't have to build in any logic to gather the response from the recipient. The flow is going to hold itself. Once it sends out this adaptive card, it's going to wait until it receives a response. Right now, Power Automate still has that 30-day timeout limit. It is supposed to be extended. It's on the roadmap to, I don't remember if it's 60 or 90 days, one of the two. So this shouldn't be an issue if your person doesn't get to it in an inordinate amount of time. But you can also build in with custom adapt cards some loops, some reminders. You can restart, an approval if needed. In this case, our approvals didn't go beyond 1 week, so we didn't need that capability. But here's what the JSON looks like for an adaptive card. So it's a bunch of text. There's a pattern to it, right? And then we can plug in our dynamic content from Power Automate in order to fill in the gaps. And that's how we ended up getting those really beautifully crafted Teams messages with my name and a tag and the record number and the coach who submitted everything. We can do formatting from within here, or we can also do that from within inside the designer. So it's JSON, but we also use some Markdown, some HTML. I'll go over that a little bit later. But this is what it would look like. It's really just a huge text block that we're plugging and playing. And again, you can see there's no need for us to have, take an app from, a dev test production solution. We could copy it and we can store the text in like Notepad or something. I would say that's best practice, but it's that easy, right? You can copy and paste it from Word or anywhere else. So it's not too much of a heavy lift. Okay, so after we post the adaptive card, we then set a variable when the adaptive card is addressed to say complete. If it's not, we're on this 48-hour reminder that we check to see if that variable is set to complete, and then it'll end the flow. So we have check for that variable, and then we just have a switch to say based off of whatever the button that's pushed on there, we then have to set some variables to then send that message to the coach that says, hey, for this workout submitted on this date and time, your workout has been approved, rejected, or canceled by this approver. And then we go ahead and we update that the status log again. So the other branches work very similarly. And then we end the flow. We send a response back to the parent flow to say, hey, this is great. And then it can continue on its merry way. For the adaptive card URL, we had to do a few kind of funky things because we don't have native actions to deduce some of this information. So we had to get channel messages. We then have to filter the messages if it's a bot or not, if it's a user or if it's a bot. Then we say, okay, well, we only want to get messages with attachments. If we filter all of them without the attachments, then we're just going to get non-approval records. So we had to do a few more things in order to generate the adaptive card URL, but we were able to do that so we can link it inside that SharePoint list. If you don't need this, you don't need to go through all of this. And then we just have that 48-hour reminder, which I said. So in this case, we have it on 30 seconds, but we say if the card complete variable on the first branch is equal to false, then we send a response to that adaptive card thread that says, just a reminder, and we tag the person like we did before. And then if they have completed it, then the flow is just going to run as normal. So overall, that's how the kind of logic has worked for this flow. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint for a little bit to show you how we came to the conclusion of using custom adaptive cards instead of the other solutions that were available. So give me 1 second. So how did we get to this point? Well, we said that we had some Exchange Online problems. This was in 2020 when this solution was created. So we had a few less options, a few less actions that we could use with Power Automate. So I explored several things, one including email with options. So you might have seen something like this, and this is an adaptive card. So you would send an email with options to somebody or an approval request. These are customizable, linked to a document as well, or a file or whatever you would like. And this comes in through Outlook. They're created an email. You can do the start and wait for a response, just like we did for our custom adaptive card. So when you send out this email with options, the flow will hold and it'll wait for the response. You have customizable choices. So you can change this from approve, reject to cancel to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 apple pie, shepherd's pie, whatever you want. So those buttons can be customized. The emails are generated from the person who owns the Outlook action. So whoever's account is logged in for this flow. So if you're looking for a solution that's going to send, say you have an Excel spreadsheet and you want to send an email from people's email addresses in that spreadsheet, it's not going to work that way, right? It still follows permission. So it's whoever's account is logged into that email action or that connection will be the one who sends the email. So you can see it came from me. Both HTML and Markdown are supported. I didn't show it here, but the adaptive cards kind of come in two. So you can write it in HTML or you can do Markdown. So you have two options there. And only one recipient is allowed for this. So if you try to create a flow, an email with options, and even if you concatenate email addresses in the to field, it's going to send out individual emails with options to people. So this was not an option for us. Posting options as a flowbot to a user. So instead of Outlook, we would go with that Teams chat that we could do. Oh, did it pop up? I think my presentation is stuck. Give me 2 seconds. Oh, there we go. Okay. So it's created in a Teams one-on-one chat, right? So between you and a user, this could be between a service account and a user. It's just a one-on-one chat. We can also use the start and wait for a response as well. So that flow will pause again and wait for the user. And we only have customizable choices. So you have to be the one to put in the choices. Notifications are within Teams, so you get that little activity bell. And again, only one recipient is allowed. So again, it's a limitation that we can't use this with multiple people. If you wanted to send out the same card to a group of users, you can't do that. Markdown is supported. You'll see we kind of alternate. So emails are typically HTML formatting. Teams messages or Teams chat messages are in Markdown. The next one was Power Automate approvals. Some of you have seen this as well. So again, another type of adaptive card that allows us to do some work with it. And sorry, it keeps getting stuck. There we go. We can create approvals in multiple places. We can do this in email. So this is what it looks like coming from email. We can do in Teams chat. So one-on-one chat with somebody or in a channel. We can also do it in Teams chat with multiple users because there is the ability to create a group chat as an action. If you want to create a chat, you can add a bunch of users. So you could do it that way, or a channel. Power Automate is going to be the sender. So here it says, at least an email, it'll say from Microsoft Power Automate. Even recent tests of mine, if you use the approvals in email, it's not going to go to your focused inbox. It's going to go to your other. This may be a design consideration if you were to use this, from email, because your users may not even know what the heck Power Automate is, and you may not want to confuse them. When we're sending adaptive cards in a channel, it'll say so-and-so on behalf of Power Automate. So that's something, if you're doing it in a channel, it's a little bit clearer. No Dataverse is required to use these, to use approvals in the default environment. Anywhere else, though, starts to get a little challenging. Reassignment is available, and I put this as an asterisk. Reassignment is available if you've not seen the approvals portal in Power Automate. Let me see if I can bring this up for you. My computer's being very slow on this end, but there is an approval center in Power Automate. Your users would have to go to the make.powerautomate.com website in order to reassign. So it's not a native function to be able to do from within email. So design consideration, right? If your users don't know what Power Automate is, you may not want to lead them to the portal to make it a little bit easier. Multiple response locations. So this can be both a good thing and a bad thing. And I don't think this has changed since 2020. When you send an approval using Power Automate approvals, you get multiple notifications, especially if you're doing it in a channel. So you get a notification in a channel, you'll get one in the activities, you'll get an email as well. And there was one more place. So it might confuse your users as to where do I address this this approval. And I've seen some people say they actually want all of the reminders. When I did this presentation at NPPC, people were asking like, oh, okay, like that doesn't seem like a bad idea to me. But think of your users. If they've got 3 notifications, which place do they go to address? Do they need to address all 3, or do they only need to address 1? So might be something to think about when you're designing for your users. You can turn off the activity notification in Teams from within inside the action, but you still get at minimum 2 notifications.
Great.
What are,
Oh, sorry to
okay.
interrupt, but before we
Yeah,
move
go
too
ahead.
far away, we had 2 questions in the chat.
Oh, sure.
The
Yeah.
the first thing, is it possible to use adaptive cards in Outlook when JavaScript is blocked by system policy?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I'm rereading it. Is it possible? So you should need JavaScript for your adaptive cards. Where would you be using JavaScript? Was that Brian?
Brian, any chance you can elaborate?
Yeah, sorry. So when I tried it, I noticed that for the JSON to be able to load, it did do like the script and then type was equal to the JSON
Mhm.
to get it to load. But they, by system policy, they just like completely nixed any script tags. So, we could put in
Interesting.
HTML and CSS, but it stripped out any scripting.
Interesting. I don't think I've heard of this before. So maybe I'll have to get back to you on how to address that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maurice, and a second question for you too. Is it possible to capture who an action was reassigned to so as to be able to send them notifications beyond the approval action, such as additional reminders?
You can, but there is no native ability to do that from within the Power Automate actions. So you would have to design this feature, right? So you could put in a button inside a custom adaptive card to reassign, and then also it could be a child workflow off of this to say, when reassign is selected, go run this flow. So you can do it. It is possible. You would just have to build in that logic for it. Because remember, the JSON itself or the adaptive card itself doesn't have logic to it. So you could do that
Okay,
in Power
and then
Automate.
where would the data of who it's assigned to get stored? Is that stored like in the system tables of Dataverse somewhere, or can you pull that right from the adaptive card?
You can pull that right from the adaptive card. So as you saw before, we were able to pull comments. We were also able to pull the person who did this. So you get to decide where you house that data. So apart from the Power Automate Approval Center, if you use approvals, that's in the Approval Center. But if you're using custom, you decide where that data sits.
Got
So it
it.
can, yeah,
Thank you.
so it can, yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, that can be Dataverse, that could be Outlook, that could be Excel. So you determine the data source where you would like that to sit. Good questions. Anything else?
That was it for the chat, but if you're open to anyone coming online, if anyone else has anything.
Yeah, if anybody has any other questions before I go through, I think I have one or two more adaptive cards that we explored with the solution.
Looks like you're in the clear. Oh, just kidding. Tom says, will any of these work cross-domain? What about the Outlook usage? Will that work with general internet users that have Outlook?
Ooh, good question. Very good question. There are some cases where you can use them externally. So like Power Automate approvals won't leave your organization, but a custom adaptive card could if the person has Outlook. So that's the only thing is you have to know that the other end user is using what you're using as well. The way that so when we go look in the adaptive card designer on how to design one of these, you'll see that there are like technically different ways or methods to build the cards. So there's one for Teams, there's one for Viva, there's one for whatever other channel that you want to use. So they will be slightly different. So you do have to make sure that they align with whatever your users have. But internal to your organization, you should be okay. Great. I'm going to keep going if there are any more questions. Because if there are, please, I have the chat open now, so I should be able to see them too. Thank you, Tina.
No worries. Thank you.
Okay, so Power Automate approvals. One or all responses are required, so you can have multiple people respond to the same approval, with an email. So it could be there are selections for first to respond, or all people must respond. And then you can also vary the responses. So I think there's, if I remember correctly, there's 4 standard options. It's like first to respond, approve or reject, or custom response. So we could have approved or rejected. And then it's all, waiting for all people to respond. Markdown is supported for this. We talked about how if you need to reassign, you have to go to the Power Automate portal. One thing with approvals is if you are working across tenants or across environments, that's where approvals tends to get a little hairy because you can't send an adaptive card to a different environment. So if your users only have access to the default environment and you want to send cards to somewhere else, so maybe it's from, like the IT organization from a production environment somewhere, you're not going to be able to do that. So that's one of the limitations that you may run into using Power Automate approvals if you need to use them across tenant or across environment. Okay, so I just put this in. Believe me, if it was available, I tried it. So that just what was available to us in 2020, we didn't have a ton of options. Some of these connectors have gotten a little bit better, but custom was the way that we went. So we went with post an adaptive card to Teams and wait for a response. Let's see again if this is stuck. Sorry. I'm not sure why it's yeah, it's not even letting me press. There we go. Okay, so we've seen the flexibility we can use these custom adaptive cards in email, Teams, chat, or channel. And in this use case, right, we're saying just within Power Automate, we're using here, excluding Viva or anything else. Power Automate is the sender. So it'll say, right, Azure used Power Automate. So Power Automate is still technically the sender, but you can attach somebody's name to it. You could attach a bot name to it. You could attach a service account to it. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a person. Markdown is supported. There's the asterisk on one of my next slides. You have the ability to control the notifications. So you can decide whether a person gets an activity bell or an email based off of this or anything else, right? We have the option to tag people. We don't have to tag people if we don't want to. So you have some more control over using custom. JSON customization for nearly everything, which makes it really easy. Our formatting, though, like bolding, highlighting, anything else, is in 2 different formats. And we don't need CSS or HTML for this, asterisk. So we have 2 ways to build adaptive cards, and I'm going to show you both of those before I head over to the adaptive card designer. Does anybody have any questions?
Looks like you're in the clear.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to leave the presentation again. We're going to use the adaptive card designer. We are also, there we go. We are also going to use ChatGPT to help make this a little bit easier. So we looked at just a snippet of the adaptive card designer, but this is what the full thing looks like. And I can drop these links in the chat for you to have as well. And so when you go to the homepage of the adaptive card designer, this is exactly what you're going to see. It's going to give you an example of an adaptive card, and you'll see a few things. So this is the previewer that we have. So as we're editing the adaptive card, we can see what changes we're making. We can also drag and drop a bunch of these elements that we have here, the card elements, into the adaptive card. We have the payload editor. So if you wanted to, and you can make some quick edits in there if you would like, and you can also bring this up and down. But you'll see it's the text that we created, in the other in the adaptive card in the flow, and then we could just plug in our dynamic content as needed. We can also edit from the card structure if we would like. So we can do that there. But this is just overall. If we have to select a host app that we're doing this. So I said, remember, there's like a little bit of difference between each of the cards. So this is for the bot framework for web chat, but we can make our adaptive cards for Outlook, for Teams, for Viva, for Cortana, and. So we would pick one of these. I'm going to start from a new card just to show you how we can build in a few new things. So if we click on new card, it's going to open this up. We can either have a JSON schema ready or we can do from blank. So I'm going to show you how to do from blank. And if we were to scroll down a little bit more in this create area, this is going to show you a ton more examples of what adaptive cards can look like. They don't have to look just like a text box with buttons. We can integrate people's Outlook pictures. We can use them for logging into systems. If you are going on a business trip, you can submit expenses or approve expenses. You can get your flight information, right, if the company's taking care of that. So it's not just for approvals, right? Our use cases for approvals. If you were doing a company survey, trying to gather, for a company picnic or something, you could give some very easy ways for people to select what's from the menu, gather all this information into SharePoint or Dataverse to use for something else, display it in a Power BI dashboard if your heart so chooses. So just you can make it as simple or as complex as you would like. So hopefully this will give you a few ideas. So we're going to go back up to blank. And it's going to bring us to an empty adaptive card. Don't be scared. One thing I will say is the version when we're using Teams, the version of adaptive card does matter. And for whatever reason, just like Microsoft products like to act sometimes, it doesn't like the most current version that it gets you. So go a step down. So we're going to do 1.4. If you were to have version 1.5 and you put that into the adaptive card action in Power Automate, it's going to fail out. It doesn't like it. I cannot tell you why. So we're going to go with version 1.4. And we have the option to add things to this, right? So we can drag in a new text block. And you can see our payload editor starts to update as we're adding things here. So I'm going to say new sort approval needed. All right, so I added a text box. I can add then a couple of different things to this. So I'm going to add in something called a fact set, which already has formatted bolded for me. So this could end up being my my fact set could be like record number, right? So our value we would plug in with our dynamic content if it's not something that's already pre-filled. So I could go down to my fact set and say I'm going to change this one to be, record number. And as I'm editing this, your previewer will also edit. So we can add text blocks, we can add rich text if we wanted to. We can add videos, like we saw in the other one we could add photos. So we can do whatever we'd like. We can have input text if we would like. So we could have people input text. We can add a date picker, to it. And you could establish what do you want that default date to be. You can even set a default date to that if you would like. We can have choice sets. And you would then fill in the choices for what you would want for that. So you can use overall this adaptive card editor to do this. This is a little bit more manual. So you plug and play what you would like to add. And then you would copy the text from the payload editor into a Power Automate action and run it, and that would generate your adaptive card that you see in Teams like we've had before. So you would add your whatever you would like, your dynamic content, your app mentions, all of that information can go into the card. That's going to be a very quick one since this is manual. I want to show you how to use ChatGPT now to create Microsoft Forms editor number 156. Yes, that's what we're going for here. So very, very manual process, but it's better than maybe having to type out all of, your fact set, knowing what a fact set is or what the proper, terminology is for, an action submit button, et cetera, et cetera. So like here we could do an action and we can do a button for open a URL or submit a button, show another card, execute some sort of function if you would like to do that. So that's how we would use this editor. And then if we were to use ChatGPT, give me 1 second. Oh, I have to log in because give me 2 seconds. It logged me back out.
No presenter makes it through a user group unimpeded.
Right. Oh, okay. Maybe we won't be able to do this today. Let's try that again. Fingers crossed. Okay. You know what? We're thwarted by the gods today. So the idea for ChatGPT is, right, I hope everybody's used it maybe at least once. We have a screen where we can ask ChatGPT or our friendly robot overlords to do something for us. And so I'm going to try this one more time. If it doesn't work, then we'll proceed. But I can go ask ChatGPT, can you create an adaptive card for me and spit out the JSON? And then Aha, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so I have already just text on a sticky over here. So again, I am going to ask ChatGPT just to help me build an adaptive card. And ignore my spelling, please. Okay, and if I had been just a little bit more specific, it wouldn't have given me all of this. I should have said, I'm going to show you, what I'm going to put in the card. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So in this case, I'm copying and pasting. Um, you can see from my sticky note that I am going to give it the format in which I want it to put in the JSON. So I'm going to say I want a header of sports approval needed. Name has submitted a workout for the sport, and here's a summary of the submission. So I'm telling it I want a fact set for some of these, and then I want some action buttons for these. And I could even just say buttons to this. So here, I'm just going to copy and paste this. And it spits out the JSON for me. So if I go put this into Power Automate, which I will, let's see what it does. But we can see, yeah, text block displaying placeholders, right? So I put square brackets to note placeholders. I could have put an actual person's name if I wanted to. So if I'm copying just the format from an adaptive card that I already have, I can leave names in there. I can leave dates in there. It's going to know that these are example placeholders, right? So I just put 1/1/23 and I can fill this in with additional information. So let's go ahead and copy this. We see that it does give me version 1.5. So we could always tell ChatGPT up front to say, I'm going to provide you the JSON or I'm going to provide you, the contents of what I would like in this. Please make this version 1.4, and it would do that, or we can simply change that ourselves. So let's copy this code. And then let me go grab another screen for us to create a flow in. And I'm just going to use an instant flow for this one. And we can pretend like we're pulling, data from SharePoint. So I'm going to use let's do start and wait for, or we can just do Teams. Let's find this really quickly. And let's do adaptive. So I'm going to do post an adaptive card and wait for a response. And it's going to ask me what I want to post as. Do I want to post as Flowbot or do I want for PBA? We're going to do Flowbot. And then it's going to give me the option to post in a channel, a chat with Flowbot, so a one-on-one chat, or group chat. So like we said, some of these other adaptive card options only let us do with one person. Here, adaptive cards, we can do multiple people. So if you needed to have a group of folks to notify them of something, you could create a group chat from within Teams. So we're going to do, let's post this in a channel. And it's going to ask us for a few things. So it's going to ask for a message, a Teams ID, and a channel. This looks a little bit different from, oops. This has changed over a bit of time. So it might look a little bit different in your environment. I know there's some updates. So in our message, we are going to drop our JSON. And we're going to change our version to 1.4. And we can see already that it puts in the header for us. It's already put in some weight for us. So, but we could, if we didn't like what was here, we could go ahead and use some markdown to format that, or we could go back to ChatGPT and say, hey, can you make this bold or make it italicized? So for this text, so I'm going to go ahead and add a few more responses to this. So I think we have name. I'm going to add text. Let's see. We have record numbers. Let's say record number. We'll fill just a few of these in. Let's do approver. And let's say fast track. This was just like a yes or no. I just want to show you how I can use dynamic content in this. So here we have name. So we're just going to fill in name with username. So this should end up being me. Has submitted a workout for sport, which we didn't put. So I will add sport in here. Sport. Thank goodness for spell check. Okay, so sport. Right. Record number, we're going to insert this value here. Approver. Right. One thing that you can do from within the adaptive card designer is if you know what the actual expression looks like for your dynamic content, because I've done this before, actually with this project, you can plug it into the adaptive card designer. And when you put the JSON in there, it's going to give you the, for here, I can't point, but where it says trigger body, our parentheses with our brackets and says text, it will automatically fill in the dynamic content for you too. Because I've done this with variables, like if I have a lot of variables, so you can manually type those in Adaptive Card Designer. When you plug the JSON into Power Automate is going to recognize that that's an expression. It's going to recognize that it's a piece, that it'll convert it to a piece of dynamic content for you. Okay. So I'm going to leave this. We have approve, and for giggles, I'm going to call this pizza fruit and stew. I don't know. And you'll note that I haven't changed the data, but when we run our flow in our payload, the data is, if I select pizza, it's going to say approved. So I should usually match these up. But this is returning when we run the flow, it's going to return what we've selected in the button. So the button can be different from what the data you want to select. So, okay, that's how we're going to set up our flow. Let's check. Okay, so we need to add our Teams channel. And again, it ends up adding it below the message. Before it used to add it right at the top so you wouldn't forget. And let's go ahead and stick it in our sport performance and workout approvals. Let's see if this will run on the first go. Okay, so I'll just click this. Save that and then test. All right, so it's asking us for a few things, right? So we're simulating being the database. So we're going to add a few things. So I'm going to say, let's put record 4. The approver is going to be me, but imagine this could be a people picker. Fast track, we're going to say, no, this record's already been reviewed before. And for our sport, let's say volleyball. All right, it's running. Okay, and so this is what it looks like when you have a flow that waits for a response, right? So we'll get this little timer, and we should be able to go into Teams wherever I put that browser tab. Should be here. And let's take a look. Did I put it in the right place? Okay, I might have to go back and check that I put it in the right channel. Let's take a peek. Ah, I put it in the wrong place. Or did I? Nope, I put it in there. There we go. Just took a little bit of time. All right, and there we go. So we just plugged and played into it. And again, our pizza fruit stew is there. even though it's approve, reject, whatever we put underneath there, I think cancel. So this could be already created a clickable hyperlink for us too, and even plugged in an example for us to click on, which I don't think anything's there. But some of this could be dynamic content. Some of this could be hard-coded, right? We left our dates hard-coded. And it was just that easy to create the adaptive card. I'm going to go ahead and click pizza. And we updated the adaptive card with thank you for your response. And if we go back to the flow here, that it finished for us. So it takes that response pretty quickly. And then just want to show you what the payload looks like, right? So has some generic things for us, but then that'll come from the flow itself, but we are able to see that we selected the button pizza. And if we wanted to actually get some more of the information out, like the dates, the sport and everything, we actually have to create some expressions to do that. So that's the only thing with custom adaptive cards. You can put a ton of information there. When it's time to pull the information out, then we have to go take a look at creating some expressions to deduce the information. Okay, I think that is it for the demo. I have a few more slides to show you, and then I can open the floor for questions. And it looks like it's stuck again. Sorry. Come on. Okay, so for our adaptive cards, we said that we use Markdown with an asterisk. Sometimes we have a little bit of HTML. So any headings that we're putting in our adaptive card are going to be in HTML. Anything within our fact set or our text here in the body of the adaptive card is going to be using some Markdown. Our file links are also going to end up being like some HTML. So there's a mixture of things here. There is a syntax guide that I will give you for it, so you don't have to remember which of these uses what. Usually the Microsoft documentation, at least for each of the other adaptive cards that we've talked about, tell you what type of format it will take. So you might have to reach back into your noggin for some HTML knowledge, but you won't have to do it alone. And we looked at some of the actions today. So our team's actions for adaptive cards. So reply with adaptive card in a channel, post adaptive cards and wait for a response, update an adaptive card, or post a card. So reply with adaptive card does have some limitations. It only works in the default environment, if I remember correctly. So that's a limitation of that connector. There isn't anything that we can do with that. But to have users respond to an adaptive card, you would want to use the post adaptive card and wait for a response. Update an adaptive card in a chat or channel. So like we saw the adaptive card update and say, thanks for a response. We could update that with more information if we would like, because right now in the action, post and wait for an adaptive card says, what do you want your update message to be? But it's just one line of text that you can use. So you can update an adaptive card to refresh to show something else. Excuse me. And then if you only want something to display information, so flight information or, reminding employees that open enrollment is available and maybe they don't need to respond to it. You could put like a hyperlink in there, but there's no action that you need to gather, information from your user. You would just use post a card in a chat or channel. And that's the end of my presentation.